From Detroit's University District, this is an update edition of Your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Shianne Nocerini. It's Wednesday, March 6th, 2019.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. We found the punch key. I ate mine, which was prune flavor, and frankly, it was delicious.
For me, raspberry was a flavorbomb.com.
Flavorbomb.com? What are we, Guy Fieri, dude? Dude.
What can I say? Jer's bringing it on down to Flavortown.
There's big news on the retail front for downtown Detroit. H&amp is coming to town, and their first Detroit location aims to open in the fall of this year. To chat about it, Shianne Nocerini, who covers a lot of our retail and lifestyle happenings, joins me right here in studio. How are you, Shi?
I'm great. How are you?
Good to see you. So for people who are not familiar, and I mean, H&M's a big brand, but for people not familiar, maybe like when I was exposed to the magic of what is Kohl's, what is H&M?
I like that you didn't know the magic of Kohl's, but anyway, H&M basically sells men's, women's, and children's clothes. And it's a global brand, so they are basically everywhere. And it started in Sweden back in the 40s as a women's store. And just as the years have gone on, they've added men's, children's clothing.
All the things. So I understand it's a fast fashion brand. So also, I'm not so familiar. What does that mean?
Fast fashion is affordable, trendy clothing. But it's generally one of those things where you're only going to wear it for a season or two. It doesn't hold up.
So this isn't like handcrafted jeans with like, sewn in zippers by people. This is more of like cheap and cheerful.
Yes. But that said, even though it's fast fashion, they do have this really cool program where you can take back any of your unwanted clothes and they will recycle them for you. And it doesn't matter from where you've bought these clothes, they will recycle anything.
So from what you're saying here, and I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that there needs to be more affordable retail downtown, but this kind of joins Nike and Warby Parker because like if you go to the Nike store, a lot of the stuff's there is very affordable. There's really good prices on that stuff. Where Warby Parker is eyeglasses, but you can walk out of there for $120 for eyeglasses, things like that. So this kind of joins them for accessible brands, doesn't it?
It really does. Right now, downtown's retail is mostly high end. And that is pretty typical of a major downtown area. But H&M is a more accessible brand, and that's really cool.
And this isn't like a mini store or anything.
No, this isn't. It's going to be 25,000 square feet. So it's up from what their usual brand stores are.
How big are their actual usual stores?
Around 20,000 square feet.
So another thing is that I thought I saw something about this. Again, obviously, I'm not the retail and fashion paragon or expert here, but I did see something online. Didn't they close a bunch of stores recently?
They did make an announcement that they were planning on closing 160 stores across the country through 2019, but they didn't name any stores. At the same time, they are also planning on opening 335 new stores, but that's going to be outside of Europe and the United States.
The reaction online that I've seen so far, and I mean, this is early. We're recording this just a couple hours after the announcement, but the reaction online, people are really pumped about this. They are psyched. But as a little reset, this is also something that's kind of normal for downtowns, right? Most
main downtowns have an H&M store. Like there's a huge H&M store on the Magnificent Mile in Chicago. It's 60,000 square feet store in Times Square in New York City. So most major downtowns have an H&M store. So this is big. This is exciting for Detroit.
Well, it's also a harken back to the day, right? Because if you think about Hudson's and places like that, thinking about history, there's also, before I let you go, there is a historical component to this little development. Why don't you talk about that for a second? You've got some interesting info.
All three of those buildings were designed by Albert Kahn. And they're going to be on the west side of Woodward near John R.
Okay, so right in the heart of things, like near that Lululemon, the John Vervatos, all that stuff.
So 1505 Woodward, which is right on the corner, has roots in the fashion industry because it was once home to Richmond Brothers Company, which was a men's haberdashery store. And upstairs, you'll find Rocket Fiber and International Bank Card. The facades at 1515 and 1529 Woodward recently underwent a complete restoration, and they were once homes to Grinnell Brothers Music Store and the Sanders Candy Store.
I remember how people lost their minds. Remember when we first saw those Sanders signs? We
Yep.
had that post first up on Daily Detroit. But what's interesting about that is that was actually the facade from the 40s. They took that down and turned the clock even more and went back to the 1910s. I only know because I covered that particular story. It's beautiful with the windows and the glass and the wrought iron and all that stuff. So it's pretty fancy now. Well, thanks for giving me a reset to those of us who, frankly, had no idea about retail whatsoever.
You're welcome. No problem.
Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan delivered his State of the City address last night. A lot of the material he covered would be familiar to those of you who are regular Daily Detroit listeners. But Jer, our Duggan correspondent, was tuned in with a big bowl of popcorn and a giant 2-liter of Faygo. He's going to pull out a few highlights for us. Jer.
The moon mist kept me up all night, man.
All right. Well, let's start in the neighborhoods. The mayor spent some time talking about neighborhood development. What's up?
Well, there is still a lot of work to do in the city, but I'd say it'd be pretty false to say that that no progress has happened outside of downtown. You know, you see a lot of people starting, like, who have said chatter for a long time, nothing happens in Detroit neighborhoods. I kind of think that's patently false. I mean, over here by the University District, there have been quite a few businesses open, and there's more retail. I mean, you name it. There's things that are happening. There's that Binks Grill that's starting to go. There's some cool stuff. There's stuff happening in Southwest Detroit. Those developments we recently covered over by Jefferson Chalmers. So there's a lot happening. Also to do with the neighborhoods, obviously, job training. But we've covered this so many times on the podcast that I'm just going to say, I acknowledge it. I see it. Duggan took a victory lap, and let's move on.
The mayor also talked about surveillance cameras. That's apparently set to expand across the city. What's going on there?
Yeah, the mayor is planning to tie traffic cameras and Project Greenlight cameras together to create a network of about 1,000 cameras to track shootings, carjackings, and other criminals around the city. I think we're going to spend some time, Sven. I think it might be a good idea for us to get on the street and talk to some Detroiters and see how they actually feel about this one, because there seems to be a lot of controversy online, but also there's a ton of precedent for this in other cities. You know, over across the pond, London has a massive network of cameras, and Chicago has more than 30,000 of them networked together as part of something that they call Operation Virtual Shield. So it feels like, although this feels weird and squidgy, it also feels like lots of other cities are already doing this. It'd be interesting to see how people feel.
We are living in an information and surveillance age as I stare over at the now dormant Amazon Alexa. All right. Detroit's demolition program was also a topic. It's been in and out of the news, both for the number of blighted homes they've demolished, but also that, dogged, persistent federal investigation about, contaminated backfill, dirt used for backfilling the home foundations, and, alleged improprieties around awarding contracts. What did the mayor have to say?
Well, to be clear, all of that just still hangs in the air. It's still really murky. In the speech, the mayor defended the demolition program, and he said that neighborhoods with blighted houses that have been demolished are safer. He pointed out a study about that. He also acknowledged that there have been some stumbles and that the city has removed some contractors from the program. But he blames most of the issues on the fact that they're moving faster with these demolitions than before. For his part, Duggan says that 20,000 houses around the city will be demolished by the end of this year. But, this stuff still keeps hanging on. I don't know why. He's a guy with a lot of legal background. In fact, in the speech, he talked about the ways he was using his legal background. The city of Detroit's going to have expungement lawyers now and a bunch of other things to help Detroiters. So I'm surprised that this thing hasn't been able to be shaken yet. And it makes me think, all right, what are they really looking into? Because although a recent city inspector general report found nothing inconsistent with land bank policies, and, just recently, the Free Press did some great reporting where they talked about how contractors have just buried the construction debris of demolished houses right on site, which from an environmental perspective is no good.
No, it's terrible. And I think that's been a practice, kind of unacknowledged, but I've heard talk about that across the city for years. Going back before Duggan was in office, I think. even. All right. The last point to touch on, the mayor said that there have been 35,000 people moved out of poverty around the city and that the poverty rate in Detroit has gone down. What's he talking about, Jer?
Yeah, I would really like to see more data on this and more granular data. So Detroit's poverty rate is down, and it's a big question that I have. How much of this data is made up of longer term residents and how much of it is made up of the newcomers, right? Because the reality is, and we see this, being in the city, covering the city, there's a lot more affluent. They're generally white millennials that are moving into the city,
Right.
Either from the suburbs or a lot of folks actually from other cities. I think that's not reported enough. I mean, when I stayed in Midtown, when the neighborhood started to change, it was mostly folks from other places.
Like Brooklyn and,
You
other,
name it across the country.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But is it replacement or is it uplifting as what's kind of been portrayed, right? If you're going to take a victory lap on poverty going down in the city, the question is it people who have stayed in the city that are making more money, which would be great? Or is the number just newcomers coming into the city? And statistically, if it's not replacements, Sven, it would be very unique in America. Usually what happens in this country is that when an area economically improves, it becomes mostly white. And
gentrification, yeah.
exactly. That isn't just a Detroit thing. That's how America works. And I think if I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe there's only been one city in America that has bucked that trend. And I think it was down in Georgia. So Detroit not doing that would be very notable. It also makes me skeptical.
Yeah, I'm not sure where this big groundswell of new jobs that are sweeping, longtime Detroit residents out of poverty is. I haven't quite seen it, but I mean, it's not Quicken and the other new companies opening downtown because they're not.
Yeah, there's hiring on the margins.
Those are higher skilled,
Yeah.
jobs that are, largely, frankly, going to white.
Oh, for sure. But there is more job training. And that, for sure, I will say is definitely good to see. Daily Detroit is brought to you by people like, well, you. That's right. Our monthly members at patreon.com/dailydetroit. Consider chipping in. We'll send you some stickers and you'll help keep the project going. Thanks.
Medical marijuana businesses operating under temporary licenses in Michigan will be told they have a hard deadline of March 31st to get a license or be forced to close. Around 50 unlicensed dispensaries are currently operating around the state. That's down from more than 200 late last year. Cease and desist letters from the state will go out starting in early April. The Michigan Marijuana Licensing Board initially set a deadline last September to be licensed or get shut down. But that deadline's been extended several times after temporary dispensaries challenged it in court. The Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, or LARA, is also recommending that weed grown by registered caregivers can continue to be sold by licensed dispensaries after April 1st, so long as it's been tested. The state has been allowing that arrangement amid a shortage of supply for medical marijuana patients. Governor Gretchen Whitmer last week issued an executive order to abolish the Medical Marijuana Licensing Board. Her order would see that task instead handled by LARA.
Before we let people go, let's talk about what we're doing on Friday night, Shi.
Yes, sure thing, Jer. And people, you can come hang out with us.
I'm not sure why you would, but you can. Here's the cool thing that's happening. Empty Bowls Detroit. It will be this Friday night from 5 to 10:30 at Shed 5 in Eastern Market. And Shi and I will be celebrity soup servers. What's cool about this event and why we're glad to be a part of it is this event happens every year and it raises money for the food program at Cass Community Services. So you probably have heard their name before because we've covered it a ton, but we've covered it a ton in a different way in that they have those tiny houses. They're over by the lodge. But a big part of what they do is feeding folks.
Yes. So Cass provides food, housing, jobs, and a free health clinic to those in need. And they serve nearly 1 million meals every year.
And there's a lot included in these tickets. They're a little pricey, but they're worth it because it's a charity. But there's also a lot in it.
Yes. So tickets include all of the soup, bread, cheese, desserts, beer, and wine. It covers everything. You also get to bring home a hand-painted bowl.
Wow. Well, I understand there's about 800 of these bowls. And so what's kind of special about these?
Right. Yes, there are around 800 bowls. So for the past year, artists and volunteers have been painting bowls. And then they collect all the bowls. And at the end of the year, they do this empty bowls event.
And so you get to take one home.
Yes, you get to take one home. They also have celebrity bowls. I don't know who the celebrities are that have painted them,
We
but
do not have celebrity bowls.
we don't have
There was
celebrity
no Daily
bowls.
Detroit celebrity bowl.
But
We'll
I
be
know
that cool one day, maybe.
one day. But I know last year I think I saw a Red Wings bowl, I saw a Lions bowl, and those I think are for sale or they're part of a silent auction. So you could even get like a special bowl.
Well, and let's talk some truth here. To get us to come to any event, there needs to be food.
Yes.
That's just the real talk. And so I understand there's going to be 24 different restaurants with their soups there.
Yes. Yeah. So my favorites right now are Selden Standard, Grey Ghost will be there, and my favorite, Apparatus Room.
There are so many restaurants, though, on the list. I mean, whatever you like. And it's like a great way to have a taste of something that you might not normally get to grab in your everyday.
Right. So, and that's the thing. And it's all the soup you could eat. You could try every single one of those soups. It's a small bowl. You eat it. You like it. You go back for more. You don't like it. You can toss it out. Whatever.
No soup for you. No soup for you.
You don't have to tell them you don't like their soup. But the fact is that it's there.
Well, you could be silent about that. And you also could be silent for the silent auction.
Absolutely. They have a really great silent auction. Last year was like super impressive.
Yeah, because this is the second year you and I have done this.
Yes. So bring those checkbooks. Be ready to give. I mean, 100% of the proceeds goes to Cask Community Services, and they do a lot of good.
Well, there's also entertainment. I'm kind of excited that Detroit's own Apropos will be headlining that night. And in fact, I had a chance to talk to him earlier this week.
You know, I was asked to kind of headline this thing, and I'm going to be playing at 9 o'clock, going to be on a really nice stage in Shed 5, going to play the majority of my album. And then, you know, I'll play a couple covers that I want to do. It's going to be a great night, man. All in, you know, support of Empty Bowls, which is my favorite charity in the city. You know, I'm all about making sure people have food. I don't think anybody in the city should be going hungry. That's unacceptable to me as somebody who lives here. So I'll support Empty Bowls until the day I perish, man.
So if you've never heard about Apropos, he's kind of got a Motown vibe going on.
My sound comes from Motown. You know, I've kind of turned it into my own thing. But I like to call it modern Motown, you know, the roots of Marvin Gaye, you know, Stevie Wonder, The Temptations, Smokey. I use all of, you know, their vocal style and, you know, kind of turn it into my own thing, man, because that's what I like to pay homage to, you know. That's what I grew up on, you know, that's what, you know, my mom raised me on. My older brother, who's 11 years older than me, he knew about the classic Motown and soul. So, I mean, coming from my childhood, that's really all I remember.
So if our pitches worked on you, here are some details to join us Friday night. It is a 21 and over event. As we said before, it runs from 5 o'clock to 10:30 in the evening on Friday at Eastern Market Shed 5. Tickets for the Empty Bowls can be purchased at emptybowlsdetroit.com for $50 per person. You can also get tickets at the door for $60. It's packed. Like last year, it was wall to wall, but worth it. You met so many cool people.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to go. I'm super stoked. It's going to be a great night.
And that'll do it for today's Daily Detroit podcast, friends. For Shianne Nocerini, I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.